You know what really makes us mad? Is wasting money on CDs with only one or two good songs.
Yeah. Tell them about punk.
What's up, posers? Welcome to Punklottopod. I'm your co-host, Justin Hensley.
I'm your other co-host, Dylan Hensley.
And this is the show where we assign our guests a year, and they choose one punk, hardcore, emo, or punk-adjacent album from that year for us to talk about. And today we're not alone. He's actually here with us while we do this intro.
Yes.
We are joined by a good friend, host of the podcast One Band, Five Songs, the Oklahoma lefty, Dave Brown. Dave, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. This is weird because we just recorded like almost a 2-hour Patreon audio. So now we have to be like, oh, here, let's intro him like we haven't been talking to him.
Yeah, that's behind the scenes. No one needs to know that.
Yeah. This is a Patreon-sponsored episode, and you came up with a pretty fun idea for this episode. So I'll let you lay it out for us.
Yeah, so I thought of a movie soundtrack, but then also, hey, the movie itself would be a perfect film for Master Punk Theater, so let's do both. And the movie and soundtrack we are talking about is from 1986, and it is for Pretty in Pink, a seminal soundtrack for just Generation X overall, but definitely for punks in Generation X or punk adjacent, whatever falls under that big umbrella. The movie and the soundtrack were incredibly important for anyone coming up in the 80s, early 90s. It was almost like you were issued this with a box of Tide. I mentioned this in the Patreon, but there were certain albums that everyone was expected to have, and I have a distinct memory of in my car with a bunch of friends. I was a junior in high school, and one of the other albums aside from the Pretty in Pink soundtrack was the first Violent Femmes record, and I didn't have it, and someone was like, hey, play the Violent Femmes tape, and I was like, oh, I don't have that, and they were like, what? Why don't you have that? So it was those things you need. You needed your Doc Marten boots, you needed your Pretty in Pink soundtrack, you needed the first Violent Femmes record, and probably a few other things, but yeah, so that was my idea, and I think I'm going to torment the lads and do this to them again a few more times over the next few years. So if you hate this or you hate hearing my voice on this show, please let them know. So I'll still give them my $10, but I won't make them talk to me during it. So.
Well, hopefully we don't get a phone call from a Madball listener and threatening to beat you up too.
Oh man, that would be great. So I've actually been wanting to send in a voicemail about this. What did you all say about Madball? And oh my God, those calls are some of my favorite things on the show. That shit is hilarious.
So we did an episode.
We told the truth about Madball is what we did.
See, I know
God,
nothing
I hope
about
he
Madball.
uses.
I truly know dick all about Madball. So
we did an episode with mutual friend, Mr. Steve Doesn't. Probably, has it been 2 years since we did that episode with him? It's been a minute. And we gave him 94, and he selected the Madball record from that year. And we had a good time talking about everything and laughing about stuff. And I think in that episode we said, if you disagree with our opinions on Madball, then call us and tell us about it. And
2 years later, someone finally did.
Someone took us up on that offer.
That's amazing. Hey, Madball guy, please call back, because seriously, even if you're not angry anymore, get mad about something else and just call, because it's fucking great. I laugh so hard every time. At the gym, on the Stairmaster or whatever the fuck, and that guy comes on, and I'm laughing. People are looking at me like, what's this guy laughing about? He's insane. Madball.
We may be hearing something else from him soon. I'm not sure. I'm trying to get maybe a cease and desist with this guy some way, somehow, but I don't know. I have a feeling we're going to hear back from him very soon.
Yes.
So that's two things we've mentioned there. I guess we should actually plug those. So the Patreon, if you want to hear us talk about the movie in depth, go to patreon.com/punklottopod. Dave is on that episode as well. And like we go almost 2 hours just talking about the movie and stay fairly away from the soundtrack because we knew we had to do this. So,
which is hard to do, to talk about that movie and not go in depth into the music that's happening in the movie because it's so poignant. So I'm ready to talk about the songs.
Yeah. And then if you want to call and leave a voicemail too, that is 202-688-PUNK.
Madball. Come on, Madball. It's great. Or if there's any other rabid fans of a band that either anyone on the show has ever shit on, but please call in with your anger because God bless, that is hilarious.
And then you can follow us on all forms of social media: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, @punklottopod across the board. I think that's all the plugs. Oh, Dave,
yes.
Let's plug your stuff.
Oh, yes. So I do have the thing I'm doing really most right now is a podcast called One Band, Five Songs. It is available on Spotify, and it's only available on Spotify. So because of it uses the music talk gimmick that they have with Anchor, their podcasting platform. And it's the gist of it is I take a band and try to break down their entire career in 5 songs and talk about it. And sometimes I go over 5 songs. A lot of times I'll have like a bonus 6th song. I do have an episode coming up. Well, depending on when this drops, I have an episode coming up based on the date of recording in like 3 weeks that I play 7 songs because it's one of my all-time favorite bands and they have a career that goes through multiple styles. And I'm like, there's just no way to do this properly and limit it to 5 songs. So that was the longest episode I've done. So it was like an hour and 20 minutes. But yeah, that's what I've been doing. I've actually really enjoyed it. I finally found a format of doing a music podcast that is not a ton of work, because the ones I've done in the past where I've had to edit things together and it's just a pain in the butt. And so this one is super easy to do. Even when I'm putting in clips, it's not that bad. And I've done like 30 some odd episodes at this point. It's coming up on a year. I think it'd be a year in June. And yeah, I've got also a music blog that I've started in like 2005. First 5 years were just me bitching about politics mostly. And then it became mostly music focused. And I don't do a whole lot on there. Honestly, I keep it around for year-end lists more than anything else because I love making year-end lists. But almost every year I'm getting to the point I'm like, do I really need to keep doing this? And I don't know. I almost stopped at 2020. I was like, 15 years, that might be a good stopping point. Maybe I'll stop at 20 years. We'll see. But that's you can find the blog. It's at oklahomalefty.com. I'm on social media pretty much everywhere at Oklahoma Lefty. It's the handle there, and so there are links to One Band, 5 Songs and all those gimmicks, and or just search One Band, 5 Songs on Spotify. Interestingly, the episode that has the most listens so far has been the Phoebe Bridgers episode. Oh. Yeah, for a long time it was Dinosaur Jr., and then Phoebe has taken over, and so I still haven't. It's weird doing a show like that, trying to figure out, okay, what era of bands should I do? What are people going to care about? What do I care about? And I've actually tried. I've done 2 of my all-time favorite bands so far, and those were some of the hardest episodes to do. So there are a few artists that I'm like, there's no way I can do this without putting some other limitations on myself, like I'm just doing deep cuts or something like that.
Yeah, deep cuts is a fun angle to take, but that would almost be like a show premise, it'd be a show about deep cuts on records. So.
Yeah. That'll be my spin-off, One Band, 5 Song deep cuts only.
I was gonna say though, the last 2 episodes that have gone up as of this recording, you've done on 2 of my all-time favorite bands, and the one I think was it's almost like you're making a podcast for me, which is funny because now we're making a podcast for you right now. But so it's this fun trade-off that we've got going on. But you did the Weaker Thans and Superchunk, which top 5 bands right there. Nice. Both of them. So
yeah. So Weaker Thans was a band that there was 1 or 2 songs that I've known for a long time and have really liked. And I'd never dug into their discography, and we were like, because we chat online every day, and you had mentioned that I should do that, and I was like, okay, this gives me an excuse to dig into their catalog. And I was like, well, I could do homework, or I can listen to this band that has 4 records, and it's not a daunting catalog to dig into. So I listened to them, and I hope I did them justice. I definitely wanted to be very upfront of saying that I'm not speaking as someone who knows this artist well. This is very much me coming with brand new ears to a band that I know is beloved by a lot of people. So I tried to do them justice. I hope I did. Superchunk I've known for like 30 years or 20 years, right. 25 years, a long time.
Yeah. You did, like, it was funny because, like, you did on the Weaker Thans episode, like, you wound up picking a few things. I was like, oh yeah, those are classics. There's a Stone Cold, like, Weaker Thans hits that everybody loves. And then you had some fun, like, outside the norm choices, and I was like, these songs are great, but most people don't talk about them as like the main thing. So yeah, you did an interesting like little balance there. It's fun as someone with fresh ears. That's going to happen. You don't know what like the fan base cares about, just what you like,
right? And it's the this is insert band name here can only really tell you so much about what a band, like what their popular songs are. Those playlists that are made kind of act as de facto greatest hits, but they're not always super accurate. And so yeah, I started out listening to that, and then I listened to all 4 records, and it was fun. It was a fun experiment. I'm actually going to be doing that with the band Superdrag, a band I've never dug into. Nice. And someone requested, and I feel bad for forgetting who it was at the moment, but the fact that anyone has taken the time to ask me to talk about anything is kind of mind-blowing, because I figure no one cares or should care. But that's just me.
Well, I think everyone should care because the show is great. It's really fun. And every time I listen to an episode, I'm like, all right, now what's my 5 songs? So I really like it. It's a good show.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And I'll include links to that in the show notes. Now, let's see. What should we do? Before we move on to the main event, let's talk about soundtracks. So the soundtrack that we're talking about today came out in 1986. Dylan and I recently did a very deep dive on the 1986 overall music charts over on the Patreon, so we didn't really want to do too much on specific 86 so soon. So Dave recommended that we talk about just kind of our favorite soundtracks in general. So
yeah, I think soundtracks are an interesting lens through which to look at music, and particularly I feel like it's a way that a lot of people's music tastes, at least maybe in our age bracket, have been heavily influenced. I don't know if that's necessarily true today. Maybe the more TikTok songs are the the Zoomer analog. I mean, film soundtracks to some extent. There are those standout songs that get popular that because they were in a movie.
I think.
Have you just?
Oh, nope. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I think you're right. The music landscape is so different, but there is one thing that I think is a similar modern equivalent. The show 13 Reasons Why had a soundtrack and had songs in there that was just, especially the first season, the use of music in that show was exceptional. And I just know by going to the videos on YouTube for those songs and the playlists that were created that definitely was a driver. That was the closest thing I think to, in modern times, the movie soundtrack, the effect it had on people of my generation and of y'all's. As I speak as your elder.
It's funny, the most recent song the example that I would make of a song getting popular from a movie, it's funny, is also a Psychedelic Furs song, because it was that song that you started hearing everywhere because it was in Call Me By Your Name.
Never saw that movie, so I don't know which song it was that came back.
It was, what song is that?
Ooh, I need to see this movie, apparently.
It was a big movie, award type movie, and what, 2019?
2017 is when it came out. It's got the Army Hammer in it.
Oh yeah, Army Hammer, who's a cannibal now.
Cannibal.
I don't want to know.
It was Love My Way by Psychedelic Furs.
Oh, that's a good song.
Like you would never hear it in public prior to that movie coming out, and then after it came out, you heard it everywhere.
Well, and we'll get into Psychedelic first, but they're an interesting band because they were never a band that had a ton of big hits, and because they're not a band that was going to have massive crossover appeal for a number of reasons, but quirkiness is probably one. But we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah. So this is kind of your idea. What are some other soundtracks that are pretty important to you, Dave?
So one of my favorite of all time is the Pump Up the Volume soundtrack. Spoiler, at some point I'm going to force you guys to watch that movie and listen to that soundtrack and come on here and talk to you about it. Because one, I love that movie. It's Christian Slater's hand down best thing he ever did. But two, that soundtrack is incredible and also not available anywhere, unfortunately. So I'll send you the MP3s. So that's one that I really like. I mean, it kind of goes without saying for a Gen Xer, but Singles is a tremendous soundtrack. I've got the stack of CDs here because yes, I still have CDs. The Say Anything soundtrack is also talking about homie that made Singles is a really good one. Reality Bites was good. What else do I have here? Grosse Pointe Blank.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There's two soundtracks for that movie.
I have both of them right here, which I got in some dollar bins. Both excellent. I'll probably make you guys watch this at some point, too. Clerks also is another good one.
Oh, yeah. That's a fun soundtrack.
I had Clerks pulled. That's a good soundtrack.
Oh, yeah. Cause it's,
that's a cool like alternative rock soundtrack. Grungy.
Girls Against Boys, Alice in Chains.
It has Seaweed covering Fleetwood Mac, for Pete's sake. You can't get any better than that. And it's got the little clips from the movie in there in between.
Yeah.
Oh, it's good stuff.
I love.
Oh yeah,
that's a lost art. The clips in a soundtrack.
Pulp Fiction did that too. Oh, so good.
Yeah.
All of the Tarantino ones did. Reservoir Dogs.
He was going to be one of my examples of like Tarantino's movie soundtracks are, especially like the 90s stuff, are so known for just being like really fun collections of songs that were kind of like, I wouldn't call them novelty tracks or novelty songs, but like there were definitely a lot of songs like they weren't like the most well-known song, but they were definitely a little quirky.
Well, they were genre songs, you know, like because like Reservoir Dogs has like,
oh yeah, so many good songs in that one. Steelers Wheel,
you know, Harry Nilsson, you know, those kinds of things. Like it's not Go Tex, like it's not
Little Green Bag. I love that song.
Yeah, the George Baker selection.
And then Pulp Fiction having, you know, the Dick Dale, Misery Lou,
Kool and the Gang, Dusty Springfield, Urge Overkill,
Flowers on the Wall, Statler Brothers. And then he does it again, and Jackie Brown is more of a focus on like soul and R&B, which that soundtrack rules too.
That soundtrack's great. Across 110th Street, Bobby Womack. The Brothers Johnson version of Strawberry Letter 23. Of course, the Delphonics. I didn't know you listened to the Delphonics. I love that movie. I love that soundtrack.
Jackie Brown's fantastic. The thing that makes Tarantino's soundtrack work, especially like Pulp Fiction, these are great tastes that you would never think in a million years would go great together.
Yeah.
It's such a clusterfuck of stuff. And it's okay, so it's like I can't imagine getting in the head of someone who's like, you know what we got to do? We got to have a soundtrack with Dick Dale, Urge Overkill doing a Neil Diamond song, and Dusty Springfield, and it's gonna be amazing. I mean, how does that happen?
He would later kind of like Reservoir Dogs is kind of like keeping it to that super 70s weekend with what's his name, Stephen Wright doing the DJ for the whole movie, so that gives it like a specific kind of sound. But yeah, Pulp Fiction is the one where it's just like he went all over the place with that. But then later he starts to work with the RZA a lot. He starts to utilize more like score and then like Ennio Morricone stuff. So he kind of moves away from like just like making like a typical like soundtrack But yeah, those first 3 full,
The Once Upon a Time in Hollywood soundtrack is great too.
Is that one?
It's very much in the style of his first couple of soundtracks of being like really focused on the time period, and he puts in all of the radio, the commercial clips and the DJs talking from like radio broadcasts from that year. That's a really good soundtrack too.
Yeah. I would say, I think my all-time favorite movie soundtrack though is The Harder They Come soundtrack. Jimmy Cliff does a majority of the soundtrack. He stars in the movie itself. The movie is cool. It's very low budget. I feel like it's a bigger deal being like such a big movie from Jamaica and like starring like a big Jamaican musician. But the movie itself is just like, it's okay. But the soundtrack is absolutely amazing. The Jimmy Cliff tracks are phenomenal. There's the Maytals on there. Desmond Dekker is on there. Like, it's an amazing soundtrack that you can listen to without ever having seen the movie and get so much out of.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna have to go check this out. This looks dope.
It's amazing. Like, and yeah, I mean, it's got like The Harder They Come on there, which is like a huge song. Maytals doing the Pressure Drop, classic Toots in the Maytals track. Yeah, it's just really, really good. Dylan, what are some soundtracks you particularly like?
I mean, we talked about the Tarantino ones. The Dirty Dancing soundtrack is fun. It's very 80s and also 60s. It's very it's very back and forth between your like Eric Carmen Hungry Eyes and like Stay, Maurice Williams, that kind of stuff. But it's genuinely a good fun soundtrack, easy to listen to.
No one puts Baby in
the
a
Lost
corner.
Boys soundtrack is fun.
Oh, I forgot about that one. That is great.
It's got
Echo and the Bunnymen doing the Doors cover.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. INXS are on there a couple times. I kind of think that soundtrack is better than the movie itself.
Which one?
Maybe.
The Lost Boys.
Lost Boys.
I don't know. I've never really spent time with just the soundtrack. Just watching the movie and the soundtrack being part of it.
It's a great soundtrack. So, real quick aside. So, the the part of the beach where there's that concert at the beach and there's the muscle-bound guy playing the saxophone who looks like Conan the Barbarian.
Yeah.
The sexy sax man. Yeah.
So my first concert ever was Tina Turner on the Private Dancer tour, and he opened up.
Wow.
Yeah, he was like in her band, played a little bit beforehand, and the actual opening band was Mr. Mister. So we got some Kyrie Lays on as we were there.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was part of her band, and my parents actually saw him just walking back like around at some point, and no one knew who he was, or just like, hey, there's some rando roided up guy here. What's up with this?
He actually like still plays live, and we have a friend who actually booked him at a punk club in Asheville called the Auditorium. And he like played there.
Awesome.
He said it was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Crow soundtrack, I think, is a very notable soundtrack for just being like good from top to bottom.
The best STP song of all time is on that soundtrack.
I'd agree. Yeah, Big Empty. Yeah, I'd love that song.
That's a good one. Yeah.
It's got tons of people on it though.
Yeah, if there was a watch a movie, talk about the soundtrack episode that I would recommend, I would say The Crow is a good one.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? I loved The Crow when it came out. I saw it in theaters, and I think it's an incredible movie. I'm not sure I could watch it again because that opening scene is so brutal that it kind of messes me up. And to the point where I'm like, oh, I really like this movie. I need to buy this on Blu-ray and whatnot. And I'm like, oh God, that scene. And I just can't.
Yeah, it's a pretty brutal scene. And that movie is tough to watch, specifically knowing about Brandon Lee. And so it makes it, I don't know, I think it imprinted on me young enough that like I'll always be able to watch it.
Yeah.
But I don't know, there's tons of soundtracks, really. I'm like seeing more and more stuff here too.
The High Fidelity soundtrack.
Oh, yeah. All-time classic for me.
The classic.
Yes.
One of the best opening songs in a movie
Yeah.
ever.
13th Floor Elevators.
13th Floor Elevators. You're going to miss me.
Yep. And the way it's utilized in the scene, that's another one.
Yeah. They yank the cord out of the headphones, and then he cranks it up really loud and opens the window.
Man, we got a whole nother podcast here we can start. Like, just
yeah, we should probably just talk about the
watch a movie.
Unless you want to talk about the Daredevil soundtrack or something.
I will say that like the Daredevil soundtrack and the Godzilla soundtracks were pretty formative for us at the time that they came out. They've not aged as well. Godzilla probably better than the Daredevil soundtrack, considering it has like Nickelback and like who else was on that thing?
Oh man,
Gross.
Hoobastank.
What is a hoobastank, by the way? I don't understand.
I don't really actually want to know. It can't be good.
Yeah, I remember like I think we were just the right age for that soundtrack. That's why we liked it.
We were the right age for that movie.
Yeah.
In general.
And that movie's not terrible, especially the director's cut's actually pretty good.
Yeah, director's cut's not bad. There's some weird choices for sure, but it is a movie though that gave us Evanescence. So, yeah, good or bad, we'll see.
She has a good
your
voice.
opinion on Evanescence.
I have really no opinion about Evanescence other than the lady in the band who I should know her name, but I don't. She has a really good voice.
Amy Lee.
Yes, she can sing.
Yep. But Boy Sets Fire and Autopilot Off are on that soundtrack too. So it's just a really funny, like, what? Why are you here?
Because they were on Wind Up.
Yeah. Okay, so we've wasted enough time talking about other soundtracks. So, padding the episode. Don't know if I'll need it though. So, this was being a Patreon-sponsored episode. We didn't assign you a year, but you selected for us the Pretty in Pink soundtrack. Soundtrack before coming up with the idea of doing the movie as well.
I think I actually I had said it would be cool to do them together as doing the film and the movie. It's kind of do them side by side because they fit both. It fits the parameters of both the Master Punk Theater Patreon and the standard show. I think that this definitely falls within the parameters. I think Anne would be very appreciative or like the fact that we're talking about a lot of these artists.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, and this is, I think if I'm going to pick a favorite soundtrack of all time, it's going to be this. I love this album. I don't love all the songs. I think 6 out of 10 songs on this record are excellent, and the others I can skip. So.
Oh, interesting take. That'll be worth actually talking about. I figure what we would do with this is we would probably just go track by track on it. There are 10 tracks, and there's not a ton of notes that I really have on the album as far as information. I do have a couple things though. So, according to the internet, it was released February 28th, 1986, the same day as the film. I tried to verify that. I don't know if that's right. Seems weird. Did albums come out on Fridays in the 80s?
No, they used to come out on Tuesdays, I thought.
Yeah.
But
the Tuesday release date thing was never really official from what it kind of like became pretty consistent by the 90s, but I don't think it was impossible for something to be released on a Friday.
Yeah.
Though there is a possibility too that because it came out February 28th, being like the last day of the month, they may have been trying to go for something specifically with that by releasing the movie early. So that would have been a Friday. So the movie came out on a Friday. So there's a chance that could be a UK release date. I don't know. Who knows with that kind of information.
Release dates weren't, I think, as big of a deal as they became like in the 90s and whatnot.
Yeah. People weren't, well, because it was like based on just really when a record store got the records too. So
Right.
It was released on A&M Records, and I was gonna try and look up stuff from like, what else did A&M do in 1986? But it's a major record label, and it's page after page after page after page of just everything. So I didn't bother to look really because it would take forever, and a lot of reissues are in there too. So
Yeah.
it is a 10-track album featuring mostly new wave and post-punk artists, with a couple exceptions. We talked about this a little bit on the show, about when we each have seen the movie for the first time. I watched it maybe 10 years ago. Dave, you watched it in 1987, and Dylan watched it this week. So like we've got a wide range of options there as far as impact.
I've probably known more about the soundtrack
Yeah.
or longer than the movie itself.
That's what I was actually going to ask you, Dylan. When did you first hear the soundtrack?
I've never listened to the soundtrack, but I definitely was aware of what was on it. That it's kind of an ostensibly a punk soundtrack. I mean, the title of the movie being pretty much taken from the Psychedelic Furs song makes the soundtrack really stand out as being like, oh, that's an important movie soundtrack.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, interestingly, there's that one of the Psychedelic Furs best ofs. I can't remember which one it is. It's the one that was readily available in the 90s. In the little blurb about the song "Pretty in Pink," they mentioned that John Hughes basically misinterpreted the song for the film.
I was going to say, though, that when I did see the movie about 10 years ago, the first thing I noticed, I was like, this soundtrack is good. Like, just watching the movie, the soundtrack kind of hits you. Well, first off, it starts off with an amazing track in the movie, not in the order of the tracks on the album. But the movie starts with Pretty in Pink, and, like, I think that grabs you right away, especially if you weren't familiar with the song like I was at the time. I was like, this song's amazing. I'm throwing it on a playlist. And then like the movie just continued to like give more songs throughout. And I was like, this whole thing is good. And I think I even went and like downloaded the soundtrack and put it on my like iTunes whenever, I finished the movie. It was one of those ones that like made the immediate impact when I watched it.
Yeah, the use of music just in general in this film is quite impressive. And that's kind of a staple of John Hughes movies. And even though he didn't direct this movie, he was the producer and he wrote it, and it seems like his role was almost like a showrunner compared to like the way TV shows are done nowadays. But this is the guy who picked Simple Minds and gave them their big hit on The Breakfast Club, and so it's not unheard of that he would be into this stuff. And this is music he was, by all accounts, legitimately actually into at that time. So he was listening to a lot of post-punk and new wave and that kind of stuff. And I think that's why, and we talked about this on the Patreon episode, but that's why the portrayal of that scene and those people, I think, really works, is because it was coming from someone who had experience in that scene. And I mean, there are heavy hitters on this record. I mean, some of the biggest names to come out of like the 80s grander alternative music scene are represented here. So should we start on some of the tracks?
Yeah, we can start talking about tracks, and I have a little bit of something I want to talk about at the end about compared to the other John Hughes soundtracks, but it'll make more sense to talk about that later. So yeah, let's just like go through the tracks. So it starts off on the record itself. It starts off with Orchestral Manoeuvers in the Dark, If You Leave.
take my heart away. Promise me just one more night. Then we'll go our separate ways. We always had time on our sides. Now it's fading fast. Every second, every moment, we've got to make it last. I touch you once, I touch you twice. I won't let go at any price. I need you now, like I need you then. You always said we'd still be friends someday.
This song was so huge. This was a massive hit at the time. I mean, radio crossover hit. It was, I remember hearing this song on the radio in real time, even before I ever saw the movie. It was huge, and it was great. The music video had scenes from the movie spliced all in, and that's a lost art, in my opinion. Yeah, this is I think it's a fun new wave song.
Yeah, this song was like, it's still massive. Like, if you listen to like an 80s Weekend or like any new wave playlist or look at like a compilation, this song is probably on it.
Oh yeah.
Like it kind of is synonymous with 80s new wave pop music.
So just to kind of give you some idea of how big it is, on Spotify, 57 million plays.
It's gigantic.
Yeah.
It was their biggest hit in the United States. They had some other hits in England, so they weren't a one-hit wonder there, but here they're pretty much thought of as a one-hit wonder.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Which is,
oh, go ahead.
they have a lot of records.
Yeah, they do. They would be a challengeography band for sure. I don't know what the quality
I've thought
is.
about them, but I don't know. It's a long discography for...
Yeah, it's a lot.
I'm not too sure about, but...
I have. I will admit, I don't know any of their other music. I know this one song, and that is it. And I love this one song, but apparently not enough to bother to get into their other music.
So I was gonna ask. I was like, I listened to the song, and I'm like, okay, it's one of those songs that's like so well just because of its like ever present on the radio, and I guess I just never knew that it was an Orchestral Manoeuvers in the Dark song. Like, they were one of those new wave bands that I was like, that's a band that I've seen their name and their records in billions of places, but I don't know which songs are theirs. And like listening to this soundtrack, I was like, oh, this is them. This is that big song that they have. And it made me go, should I listen to OMD? Like, will I like them? And I didn't pull the trigger on like a record by them to figure out if I would like them or not.
I mean, it's a big investment, and even just doing a quick scan over their Wikipedia page, there's a whole section on mid-'80s style change. So, I don't know, but they are. I mean, to me, this song especially is so synonymous with not just the '80s in general, but especially with this film. In a lot of ways, this song is more synonymous with this film, I think, than the two songs that were written specifically for the film or the song the film's named after. This is, I think, in the general zeitgeist, this is the song people really think about when they think about this movie.
It's definitely the biggest hit
Yeah.
to come from this movie, for sure.
What's really funny about this, I read a little bit on the backstory of this song. So originally, the song that was going to be featured in the movie was an OMD song called Goddess of Love. That comes from their 1986 album called The Pacific Age, which they released right after this movie came out. And after test audiences didn't like the original ending of the movie, John Hughes was like, well, now we got to redo the whole ending. So he went to the band and was like, you got another song? Can I use a different song? And like with kind of lyrics that are, different, at least, but it also has to be 120 beats per minute because the actors are dancing to Don't You Forget About Me on set. So they need to get it lined up visually, which if you watch the movie, and the band members have pointed this out, it's off sync in the movie. So the whole point of having it at 120 beats per minute didn't matter because they wound up like not syncing it right.
Let's blame that on
Watching the
the
edit.
two DJs in the film.
And so when he called them and was like, hey, could you give me another song? They were leaving for tour in 2 days. And they wrote this song in 24 hours.
Damn.
They wrote their
Wow.
biggest song of their career in 24 hours.
Okay, so that means there were 3 songs written specifically for this movie. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that's
And it's
impressive.
like, it's funny that it's just like, they threw it together and they sent him like a rough demo of it. And he's like, perfect, do it. And then they recorded like a more extensive version a little bit later. But yeah, it's a brilliant song. Like it's a 5-star song for me. Like it's so good.
Oh yeah, it was a gigantic hit for a reason. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes things are hits just because they get pushed, and sometimes they're hits because they're undeniable, and this one's undeniable.
Yeah. Any thoughts on the song itself specifically?
I love it. I love the vocals. There's a kind of a dynamic of singing in a lower register and a higher register. I don't know if it's really harmonies per se, but there's a moment where it goes from singing in lower register to a higher register, and I don't know how to write music or read music or anything, so I'm probably not explaining this correctly, but hopefully you get the gist. It's just, I don't know, it's just brilliant. Since you're the person who actually understands, music theory and how to write music and read it and stuff, what are your thoughts on If You Leave?
I don't understand music theory. I just throw chords together that I have heard played together. So I can't tell you what works about this. It being a song that was written under pressure by musicians at the height of their career, though, makes total sense to me that this would be a huge hit. Just being like having the limitations to say you just have to like be decisive and say, this is a song, we don't have time to come up with anything else. I think that brings out great work in most musicians. Once you have a rapport, especially with the members of the band, and like you are kind of like just continuously always working on music like a band like OMD was, yeah, you got a hit on your hands.
That makes perfect sense. And plus, just lyrically, it's such a great love song.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they said that it's specifically about like coming to the end of your school years, and like it definitely like was centered around this movie. Whereas I guess the song Goddess of Love, I don't know what the actual lyrics of that song were about, but I don't know. If he wanted to change in lyrics, it must have been a completely different context. And there's a saxophone solo on here. I'm going to bring up all the saxophone solos. There's quite a few of them on this record.
Yeah.
But
I like saxophones, so
yeah. Should we move over to the second track?
yeah, let's do it.
This one is Left of Center by Suzanne Vega and Joe Jackson. It's technically just credited to Suzanne Vega. Joe Jackson plays piano on the song, but he gets a little bit of a credit. I've never really gotten what Suzanne Vega's deal was. I know Luca and I know Tom's Diner.
Those are both great songs.
I don't know anything else about her. Like, I know nothing at all about her.
Yeah, I know very, very little. Listening to this song on its own, outside of the context of the movie, I was thinking I should get to know her better. I enjoyed this song.
Yeah, this one's all right. I think it's in my. Is it in my 6 songs that I really like? No, it is not. I mean, I don't generally. It's not one I will automatically skip, but I mean, I like it. It's fine. There are definitely worse songs on here, I think, but it's an interesting song. Isn't Joe Jackson the guy who did the record with William Shatner?
Dylan, do you know?
I don't know. Probably. He has a very weird, like, 80s turn to his career because he's originally is she really going out with him?
So every time I see Joe Jackson's name, I think he's Jackson Brown. They're completely different musicians, but I literally, every time I see the name Joe Jackson, I imagine that brown Jackson Brown album cover
Okay.
with the yellow font.
No, I mean, Joe Jackson, I think of Look Sharp, the first record, but that's such a different sound. I mean, that's like a punk record.
Yeah, he was like a early power pop guy, right?
Like,
Yeah.
like a.
So,
And he did the same Elvis Costello sophistopop kind of like, now I'm a jazzy lounge singer turn.
interesting. So he did do that record with William Shatner, and they together did a cover of Pulp's Common People. And if you've never heard it, it is amazing. It is so stupidly good. It shouldn't be good. It is incredible. It's better than the original. So good. Go look it up.
Yeah, I would agree though with you that this is probably one of the weaker songs. And so you mentioned, I can talk about this now. You said that this was like you said it's an album that has 6 great songs, and then other ones that are skippable. Like not necessarily we'll skip them all, but. And listening to it, I also did a similar like breakdown. I was like, yeah, it's just like 5 really great heavy hitting songs, and for me personally, and like the others, I was like, hey, yeah, it's good. It's good on the. It's good in. They're better in context, I think, than if they were individually on their own. But maybe also the songs kind of suffer because they are between like these massive songs. And this is not my least favorite track. That comes later. But yeah, it's fine. It just kind of like is there for me.
Well, why don't
track 3?
Yeah, track 3.
Okay, track 3 is "Get to Know Ya" by Jesse Johnson. And so the song's playing. I'm liking this. This is pretty good. It's got a little bit of a Prince vibe to it. And then I looked up who Jesse Johnson was, and he was in The Time, which was Prince's band. Yeah. I was like, oh, okay, that makes perfect sense.
This is the song that's playing in the background during the party scene? Or is this at the prom?
No, this is not prom. The only thing that plays at the prom is If You Leave.
Okay. So yeah, this is playing during the party, I want to say.
It could be.
At the rich kid's house. And I was thinking like, is that a Prince song? Because it's buried in the background. I'm like, it's weird to get a Prince song and bury it in the background. But no, it is not a Prince song. It's who you get when you don't want to spend the money on Prince for a background song.
Yeah, this is a song that I never really connected with, and now that I didn't even put 2 and 2 together, it sounds kind of like Prince, so I might actually have to re-examine this song. But this is one that I was like, okay, no, there's a better song coming next, so I need to get past this and get to the next, because after that, the next like 3 songs to me are all bangers.
It is worth noting that Prince in 1986 also released a soundtrack, and that is Parade, music from the motion picture Under the Cherry Moon, which is that's after Purple Rain, I think.
Yeah.
It's the second Prince movie. And that one has Kiss. That's the
Kiss.
big song on that one. But worth mentioning what Prince was doing. Plus he was doing a soundtrack too. Yeah, it's cool. It's fine. I like Prince stuff. Like I like the band. I like high energy Prince, so I definitely like the band stuff, like the Revolution stuff and the Time stuff. Worth noting, Jesse Johnson also released a solo album in 1986 called Shockadelica, which I love.
I think the thing with this song is it's kind of jarring because it is so stylistically different than everything else on the record. That, to me, listening through it, I think that's, now that I'm putting 2 and 2 together, that's kind of what's like, oh, that's why this takes me out of it. Because it's doing something so different than everything else.
Mm-hmm. And if it was intended to be put in that party scene, it makes sense why it's so different.
100%.
And why it's present, too. So, yeah. Well, Dave, introduce the next track for us, then.
The next one is by INXS. It's Do What You Do. with what's spelled very wrong. So I'm fully admit I love 80s INXS. So yeah, they had a string of records that I think were excellent. I just INXS I was the age for that band, and they were I really like a lot of INXS's music. So this song, getting the soundtrack, I already liked INXS. I already knew them because by the time I actually got the soundtrack, Kick had been out. So, New Sensation, Devil Inside, the song that has Mediate with it, whatever it's called. I can't remember. So yeah, I love this. And the song is now on the reissue, at least like on Spotify, it's on the reissue of Kick, like the 30th anniversary version of Kick. So yeah, I think the song is fantastic.
Yeah, the song came out between Listen Like Thieves and Kick, so 85 and 87, so it's included here. I know very little about INXS outside of like the really big hits, like mostly the Kick stuff. That's probably the most well-known tracks, singles. New Sensation, Devil Inside, and then of course the story, the untimely death of lead singer, but
because he goes getting a little too kinky.
Yeah. It got Kung Fu too. What's his name? David Carradine.
I didn't realize that's interesting bedfellows there. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always weird whenever it's like, oh, they died. Oh,
yeah,
doing that.
Well, the other weird thing is when Michael Hutchinson died, is at first they said it was suicide because they're like, I think this is embarrassing. Which is more embarrassing? He died by suicide, or he died because he was jerking off while trying to hang himself because he thought that got a better orgasm and that went wrong, and so he died. So you either kill yourself on purpose or you accidentally kill yourself masturbating.
I think I would want people to think I did it on purpose. Yeah. I
don't know. I think I'd rather...
Really? Chasing the dragon?
I think I'd rather be remembered for doing something I love. Maybe we should cut this.
Oh, man.
No, that's got to stay. Oh.
The song itself. So I guess this is your sixth track, where this one didn't quite cross go from 5 to 6 for me personally. It's not a bad song, it's not a skippable song, but it was just it wasn't one of the 5 that made me go like, oh my god, this is amazing. It's a good song, but it's good.
It's good. I think every time I hear INXS from the 80s, I'm like, I should listen to more INXS. Because I really enjoy everything I've heard, especially this time period. But yeah.
Mm.
Well, if you ever want some song suggestions, I will happily make you a playlist or send you some stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
And Michael Hutchinson had such a great voice. That boy could sing. Yeah.
They had a very percussive sound too, like a very almost like a hip hop element to their beats in the music, and the way things just kind of hit. They always sounded very different from a lot of the other. I guess you'd call INXS a new wave band, sort of, but yeah. Yeah,
I'm new wave or probably post punk. Would be the best descriptor. Yeah. It's not like post punk in the Joy Division kind of way, but they would definitely fall in line with, say, Echo and the Bunnymen, who we'll talk about in a little bit. But I don't know. But then again, they get. A lot of times people think of them in the line, along with U2 or even to some extent REM, but U2 started out as a post-punk band, so there you go.
I also think I kind of lump them in with that alternative rock wave that happened right before grunge. So I think of that time period whenever I think of INXS.
Yes, they were one of the bands who started to break through because they had their first real hit in the States was What You Need from the album you just mentioned. The song came out before Kick. Yeah. Listen Like Thieves.
Listen Like Thieves.
So they had a hit with that, and then Kick blew up. And that came out in 87. So that was the same year that the Joshua Tree was huge. So you've got these two bands that are coming from the same general basic kind of scene, crossing over, getting this big success. And so they're kind of priming it. And then you've got, around that same time, The Cure has Just Like Heaven with a kind of at the time was a minor hit. And they would have bigger hits a couple years later. So yeah, there was that first batch, and REM then had Document came out that same year, and had The One I Love was huge hit, and It's the End of the World as We Know It and I Feel Fine was another hit. So yeah, they were that first kind of batch of bands that started to cross over from the underground indie, whatever the hell you want to call, greater punk scene that this soundtrack was highlighting.
Yeah, it is worth noting, too, that, 86 is, in the grand scheme of punk rock, weird. In the U.S., all the hardcore bands were done at this point, or they went in that metal direction. The U.K., I guess, post-punk was still pretty strong, but also, it had fully shifted to new wave for the most part. And then, there's, a blending. There's a period where new wave is essentially pop music, despite it being an original branch off of punk and post-punk. So
well, and you think 86, just for reference, my favorite records that came out that year: Life's Rich Pageant by REM, Can I Say by Dag Nasty, New Wind by 7 Seconds, the Descendants' Enjoy album, and 5150 by Van Halen.
Yeah, so it's a transition time period for punk music, especially, and yeah. Well, cool. Let's move on to the gigantic title track. We have Pretty in Pink by the Psychedelic Furs.
And this one, if you got this on vinyl or cassette, this was the last song on side A.
Oh, yeah. Great way to end side A. The song opens the movie, ends the movie on the ending credits, and is played in the middle of the movie when she's outside taking her lunch break with all the 35-year-olds wearing pork pie hats.
In the bonus features on the DVD, the director was saying that at first he didn't want to use the song in the movie, and then when he heard the re-recorded version, he was like, okay, no, this is a great song, and he ended up using it 4 different times in the film.
There's a 4th appearance in the movie?
Somewhere, yeah. And the version actually that's over the end credits is a different version than what's on the soundtrack. It goes a little longer and has an actual... It's just slightly different, and I listened to it the other day, so just take my word for it.
Is it like a... What do they call them? Extended?
I think so.
Single?
I think it was probably just recorded in the same sessions, and it covers the entirety of the credits. So they might have said, hey, can you make us one that is exactly this long for the credits?
It's just somebody in the studio just be stretch, making the stretch motion with their hands.
I will.
Isn't she pretty? How much more time do we need? Again? Okay.
I will say, I think this version is better than the original version. And that might be because this is the one I heard first. But there is a crispness to this. And it's something Dylan mentioned during the Patreon episode, is they'd been performing the song for a number of years already. So at that point, they've obviously perfected it. And it's so good.
Yeah. Originally released on the 1981 album Talk, Talk, Talk. And it was a single for that record, too. I think it did a little better on this than it did originally, but it was re-recorded, cleaned up a little bit to make it a little more pop-friendly. But I'd say the song itself is it's still the same song, it's just played a little tighter and a little cleaner.
Yeah. Dylan, do you have any thoughts on this song?
It's a great song. I love the Psychedelic Furs. He has such an interesting voice. It's surprising that they played this song, even cleaned up, played this song so many times in the movie, because there's only so much you can clean up that voice.
He's got Mike Ness syndrome. He has a very similar nasally, grainy voice, if that makes sense.
I think he has a better voice. Richard Butler has a much better voice than Mike Ness.
I'd agree with
And
that.
I mean, he did have some
yeah.
other success in the '90s with "Love Spit Love." They had they had an original song, but then they did that cover of "How Soon Is Now." That was on the Craft soundtrack. That was an excellent cover, and that ended up being, I think. No, that version was not the version that was used on that show with Alyssa Milano, Charmed. "How Soon Is Now" was the theme song for Charmed, but they actually used the Smiths version of it.
Weird. I did not know that was the theme song to that show.
Yeah.
Strange. This version of the song was released between the Psychedelic Furs albums Mirror Moves and Midnight to Midnight. Mirror Moves is another kind of classic record by the band. And like, this is the song that like starts the movie off and was the one that make me go, oh, this soundtrack's great. Like, and I hadn't heard anything else yet, you know.
It's a perfect song to start the movie. Just the way that the drum sticks, the counting in, and then the crack of the snare. It's just it was almost born to open a film, I think.
Mm-hmm. And of course, a saxophone all over this song.
Oh yeah.
Did I miss a saxophone? I don't think I did.
I know INXS.
Oh, there's a sax solo in INXS.
Because what's his name in the band plays sax.
There was probably a sax song in the Jesse Johnson song as well, a sax solo, because you know you can't have a Prince song without some form of sax.
True that, or sex. That's a whole other story.
Yeah.
So I guess we should move on to side 2.
Yeah. So this is an interesting one. So the next track is Shell Shock by the band New Order. New Order is in the movie 3 times. It's like, now I want to live in the alternate reality where New Order just did the whole soundtrack for Pretty in Pink.
Yeah, they probably could have. It would have been very different. But yeah, they have 3 different songs that appear in the film. This is one of the first real New Order songs I remember hearing and knowing. And it's still, to this day, it's one of my favorite New Order songs.
Yeah, the other 2 songs it's instrumental versions of Elegia and Thieves Like Us, which I think all come from, well, I don't know. New Order had so many singles that weren't actually album tracks. I don't know. Those could have just been individual singles. I'm not 100% sure on those. There are different versions of the song. So there's the soundtrack version, which is featured in the movie, a slightly shorter 7-inch edited version, and a 12-inch remix version, which is almost 10 minutes long, as well as an edited down version of the remix version on the Substance compilation.
God damn it, New Order. They do this shit so much. And
they do.
And that's the whole dance music thing. And yeah, that's the frustrating part is it's trying to find like this version of the song is not on streaming services, at least not on Spotify. So if I ever do, because I'm planning on doing an episode at some point on this soundtrack. But I can't really play Shell Shock because it's not the version from the soundtrack. That's just like I'm in my head when I'm planning it out. I'm like, okay, I'm not playing Pretty in Pink because the version on streaming is not this version.
Yeah.
Frustrations.
The fact that there's like an edited version of, like a shortened version of the remix is the part I'm like, what are y'all doing? You're just playing with people now. New Order released Brotherhood in 1986, which is one of their massive records, of course. And this song is so good, but it was funny when I saw their name on the track list of like bands, I was like, New Order? That seems like an odd choice for a movie like this. But it works so well, especially like the instrumental. It's over the montage while she's like cutting the dress. I think that's the Thieves Like Us instrumental.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But like, there's a couple times where like I hear the New Order song in the movie and I'm like, oh, this is perfect. I don't know why I was doubting New Order fitting into this movie.
I mean, there's contemporaries with like half the bands on this. I mean, how many of these bands had they toured with at some point? You got to figure at least a few.
Yeah. I guess there's something unique about New Order, though, to me that, like, I don't know. They just feel like this unicorn, even though there are a lot of these other bands that are in the same lane. I guess it's that I think it's the dance aspect. I think it throws me off with them.
Yeah, I think the thing with New Order is the fact that they are, you can definitely say, okay, yeah, they're definitely in that Echo and the Bunnymen psychedelic furs lane, but they're then also in the Depeche Mode lane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
they're both, depending on which album or which song you're listening to. Because that band was kind of chameleons, and their soundtrack or their discography is so goddamn frustrating. Because it's not easy to. It's like, okay, fine, just give me a best of. Give me a good collection. But so, spoiler alert: the next song is the next song I actually do kind of like. Whoever Bellius Sum is, I don't know. It's kind of catchy. Do you know anything about this artist?
He's some British dude.
Yeah,
he had like a song called like Someday. And another song called like Imagination. This was my least favorite song on the record, I think. It was just there. Like, I didn't hate it. I didn't like his voice that much, though. He was just, I don't know. I saw pictures of it and I'm like, this guy's just a dude. Like, there's nothing like, or I guess you'd call him a geezer if you lived in England. But
he's just some bloke.
Yeah.
Some bloke. Yeah, I don't know I don't think this is my least favorite song on the record. I think that's actually the next song.
Oh, interesting. I actually have some thoughts on that song.
All right, so
any final Belouis some? I don't know.
I don't hate the song, but it's kind of just whatever.
Yeah, I don't think there's a single bad song on the album, so that's worth noting.
Yeah,
even though this is my least favorite. So your least favorite track is Wouldn't It Be Good by Danny Hutton Hitters.
Okay, so I let me preface that with, as I look at this song, I know I've heard this song hundreds of times, and I cannot think of how it goes at all.
I just want to sing Wouldn't It Be Nice when I see this title. Wouldn't it be good?
So do you two know who Danny Hutton is?
Negative.
No.
One, he's Timothy Hutton's dad. Just worth mentioning there. He is the one of 3 singers in Three Dog Night.
Huh.
He wrote and like produced bands, and like he had this thing after Three Dog Night, this project called Danny Hutton Hitters. They didn't do much. So this song is actually a cover of a Nick Kershaw song.
Yeah.
Which was an early MTV song from like 83. And I actually listened to this song. And then I listened to the Nick Kershaw original. The Nick Kershaw version is a little slower, but I loved the music video because he's a guy. He goes to his apartment. He's holding some sort of like stone or something. He lets it go, and then his whole body turns into like glowing white and static. So the idea of the video is he's an alien watching the world.
The fuck? Gotta love 80s music videos, man.
Nick Kershaw, he has like a weird accent to his singing voice. Because I listened to his version too. I actually listened to his version first.
That's weird.
And it's weird. It's a weird song to cover.
It is a weird song to cover because it's actually kind of slow.
It's also a weird song for the guy from Three Dog Night to cover.
Yeah.
That makes it more confusing because I feel like it's like the Nick Kershaw version is almost like it's a little more synthy.
Yeah. Actually, I feel like the Nick Kershaw version might have fit better on the context of the soundtrack.
Yeah, I do too.
I actually really like the Nick Kershaw version. Maybe that's what it is. I just really like the original after listening to it. And like, I'm just like, okay, yeah, it's the same melody, so it's good. And that's why it's not my least favorite track.
I may have to go listen to the original. I probably won't.
Watch the video. It's fun.
Okay. Well, we have 2 more songs,
yeah,
and these 2 are heavy hitters.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next track is Bring On the Dancing Horses by Echo and the Bunnymen.
Jimmy Bob, made of stone. Charlie Clark, no way home. Bring on the dancing horses, headless and all alone. Shiver and say the words, every lie you've heard. First I'm gonna make it, and then I'm gonna break it till it falls apart. Hating all the faking and shaking while I'm breaking your brittle heart.
Why don't you take the lead on this one?
Best Echo and the Bunnymen song. I say this as someone who does not extensively know their catalog, but this is, I think, their best song that I've heard. It's my personal favorite. I love this song. It is so goddamn good.
I wouldn't say it's my favorite. I enjoy it. But it is definitely later Echo.
Yeah, released between the albums Ocean Rain and their self-titled album.
Yeah.
So they did one of those late in career self-titled records.
Yeah, I have a whole rant about that, but I won't go on it now.
Which
I don't know why.
This is like pre-Lips Like Sugar, but like immediately before that record, before that song. Because Ocean Rain has like,
That's a
I
big
feel like
single.
Ocean Rain is a little more. It's got the Killing Moon,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's like the big song.
Silver. Yeah, pretty big songs.
And Show of Strength is on Heaven Up Here. Yeah, I don't know what my favorite Echo and the Bunnymen song is. This song's great though. Like, this was a 5-star song for me. Like, it's so good. And Echo and the Bunnymen are just good in general, especially during this era.
Yeah. I like both sides of Echo though. I like pop Echo and I like neo psych Echo. So
this song though also really makes the joke in High Fidelity work for me. So this song is the one it made me go, this sounds like that Jesus and Mary Chain song. And I was like, the joke makes sense now to me.
makes sense.
How's the joke go? He says, people always complain about not having any more precious Echo and the Bunnymen records, but the Jesus Mary Chain are right there. It's along those lines.
Yeah. They picked up where your precious Echo left off.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that joke.
Picked up where your precious Echo left off. Because it's followed by he's like, yeah, but they always seemed. He goes, they always seemed awesome, is what it is. What they always seemed.
Jack Black's
And he makes
greatest
him go-
performance ever.
He makes him take a copy of the Jesus and Mary Chain. But yeah, it had that thing. It had that like repetitive, like kind of like I don't know, synth delay or whatever it is, that crunchiness on there. But
Yeah.
yeah,
but better singing than Jesus and Mary Chain, probably.
yeah,
Maybe.
different.
Different.
Yeah.
Depends on how you feel about the vocals in Echo and the Bunnymen.
I really, this is a band I need to explore more, and I will get around to it one of these days. But yeah, this song is, Meltzer, 5-star, easy. And just, am I the only one who forever will always associate the 5-star ranking system with Dave Meltzer? I mean,
if you're a professional wrestling fan, yeah, I think it's a perfect scale though, because it does with the quarter points. I think it makes. You're basically just also making a 1 through 25, but it's weird to say this is a 17 out of 25 stars. That doesn't mean anything to anyone,
right?
Well, who was it who uses 100-point scale? What magazine is that? Did Pitchfork used to do that?
I think they use a 10-point scale, which is more or less the same thing. At that point, you're just, to me, it's like you're doing grades from school.
There was it's like a magazine that used like a 100-point scale, and it was like, this record's an 87. I was like, well, what is an 87 compared to an 82?
Go fuck off.
A 100-point scale would make sense if you had a clearly defined rubric.
Yeah, and I don't know
where you could do you get this point or are you not? Do you get this point or not? Do you get this point or not? But that would be. I would hate to review a record that way. That'd be such a pain in the ass.
Yeah, that's awful.
I have to figure out who that was. I want to say AP Mag, which makes sense why it's so terrible.
And we have one more song.
Yep, the final track. Please, please, please let me get what I want by the Smiths.
The greatest Smith song ever written.
Originally a B-side and featured on a couple compilations. It's like an acoustic track, pretty much, right?
Yes.
I don't think, yeah. Morrissey's behavior not excluded, because God, that guy sucks. But I've never been a Smiths fan. I've never been into them, mainly because I always thought Morrissey sang like Miss Piggy, and
he does sing like a Muppet.
He sings like a Muppet.
Miss Piggy is very specific and accurate. It's very much a Frank Oz Muppet voice.
I could have said Fozzie, but I still hear more Miss Piggy.
I so now want to hear Miss Piggy singing like How Soon Is Now.
I think I've said before on the show that I wish they would just re-record. Johnny Marr would just get the Muppets and re-record all the Smith songs, replacing Morrissey with Muppets.
Get Animal on the drums. That'd be great. Oh my God.
Because as far as we know, Johnny Marr is cool. He does, he hates Morrissey too. So.
Yeah, I have a Facebook friend who lives in England, and she's actually a lifelong huge Morrissey fan, but she even knows he's a D-bag, and she's met Johnny Marr a number of times and hung out with him, and she says he's lovely.
Yeah, that's the impression that I've always gotten from. It's like Johnny Marr seems cool. Morrissey, even if you ignore his politics, just his personality is just ugh.
Yeah.
Gross.
But he helped write some great songs. And this song is ridiculously good. It's it's easily my favorite Smith song. It is, and again, you talk about a band whose discography is so hard to follow is the Smiths. Mm-hmm. But it's a perfect album closing song for one thing. Just it's so good, and it's used in the scene where Andy gets picked up by Blaine and Ducky's heart just shatters and you watch him just lose it. And there's also a Smiths poster hanging on the door that goes to where the alarm is that he keeps setting off in that one scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's good stuff. There's a little freak out about that. Oh, so funny. But yeah, this, so I first heard the Smiths, I think when I was a sophomore in high school. Other than this, and I don't think I was cognizant so much about the Smiths until later. And a friend of mine gave me, for I think my birthday, gave me a copy of the Smiths Rank and the Jesus and Mary Chain Psycho Candy on cassette. I got both of those. And so, that's kind of where I started with the Smiths. But my favorite Smiths stuff is actually their Peel Sessions, which had a bunch of songs that were on the either early singles or on the first self-titled record, and it's fantastic, just so good. yeah, again, though, everything with Morrissey aside, I think this song is undeniable. I think this is just a picture perfect song.
I think this is the one Smith song for me. I've never been into them. I just wasn't enough aware of them at the right point in my life, I think, to really get into them. And now it's kind of just like, well, I'm not interested now.
Yeah. There's this, like, yeah, they weren't in my radar whenever I would be like the perfect age to really get into the Smiths. And then, like, I missed it. And then later I heard all the other stuff about them, and I'm like, well, I guess I never have to feel bad about, like, not listening to the Smiths. Like, I get why people love them. I really do get why people love them. And I don't begrudge anyone who does love them, honestly.
Again, it's the cultural importance, right?
Yeah,
it's
they're
like,
important enough. And
recognize that.
yeah. So, yeah, this song really works for me, though. I think it works really well in the context of the movie. It works great as a closer for the album. The song itself is really good.
To Morrissey's credit, he sounds the least Morrissey.
Yeah, he sounds the least Fozzie
on
Bear.
this song. So
his voice always, it was like a cross between Frank Sinatra and Elvis, and not in a good way.
yeah, not in a good way. I like Elvis.
Oh, I love Elvis's voice, and I actually like Morrissey's voice. I think some of his solo stuff is really good. There was a best of that came out. Was it in the mid to late 90s? That was, I mean, that's all you need to get of his solo material, but it's really good. And it's, but man, the Smiths, you talk about a band that has taken a relatively small discography and milked more best of and compilation albums out of that than any other band in history ever. It's like every few years for a while there, it was like there was some new collection coming out. I'm like, motherfuckers, you don't have that many songs. What are we doing here?
They did that thing that British bands love to do, and it's like, yeah, we just released a lot of singles. No albums attached to them, just the singles. And it's just like, like New Order did a bunch of that too. Non-album singles drive me crazy.
Especially once a lot of those are some of your best songs.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
Like Blue Monday by New Order is a non-album single. It's collected on album versions,
right.
CD versions, but it's their biggest song, culturally,
right.
Yeah,
and like, so with the Smiths, if all you ever got was the Smith Singles 1 and the Smith Singles 2, I mean, you don't really need a whole lot else. Honestly, I never dug deep into their albums, but those single collections are, or just pick any random ass best of that have been put out. There are like 100 of them. Just pick one. That's all you need. Whatever one you can find cheap at the CD store or listen to on Spotify, just fuck it. That's the one you need. You don't need anything else. But so overall thoughts on the album, guys?
Overall, it really works. Like, it's just it's one of those compilation soundtracks that is just like, it's great. Like, it just works as an album to listen to, which you can't say about every soundtrack.
Yeah, I think it's a fun record. I think it's a record you can listen to on its own without the movie. Mm-hmm. I think that the weaker tracks are carried by the stronger tracks in a good way. I don't know that I would. Well, I would say I don't know that I would sequence this soundtrack the way that it is sequenced, though. I don't think it's a strong start to do the OMD, Suzanne Vega, Jesse Johnson songs, even into the INXS song. I don't know. I think it should have started with the Psychedelic first. It is the first song in the movie. It's the title track of the compilation.
Yeah, maybe if you just swapped out If You Leave, make it the last song on side A, and make Pretty in Pink the first song on side A. I could see that. It's so, for me, it's at this point, it's so ingrained. So I'm 30 plus years listening to this thing. Yeah, I agree. I think it's a tremendous album. It's an important album for a certain segment of Generation X, and it is. I think it really captures pretty darn well that era of time and these bands. I think it's a really good. If someone was like, "Hey, I'm curious about '80s, mid to late '80s post-punk, and I don't know where to start, you could hand them this and go, there are a few things on here that are duds, but this is a really good place to start, and most of the key artists that you need to focus on are represented. So it would be a good primer.
And I'd say even like the duds are almost representative of some of the other more mainstream sounds that were happening concurrently. So they help provide context, I think, for what else was going on. Because it wasn't like the radio was just bangers, like post-punk bangers all day long, there was, just some straight up, schmaltzy pop too. So yeah, I think that's good. We have been going for 3.5 hours here. I said we weren't going to do a bandsplain, but technically it's 2 different episodes we're releasing. But
yeah, it happens. You get me on here, and we just all talk a lot.
Yeah.
My hope is that, because these conversations are so much fun, I hope that translates for the people who listen, especially the people who don't know us. Because it's one thing for the people who are our friends listening to this can enjoy it, but if you're just some other schmo who has no idea who we are other than possibly listening to our shows, I hope they enjoy this, because I enjoy talking to you guys. I enjoy being on the show. I enjoy listening to the show, and it was fun to make you listen to an album that I think is just a classic.
Yeah, and it was a really fun exercise of movie and soundtrack, which we hadn't really done before. So we have done compilations, but never a soundtrack, I don't think. So if we did, it was like a Patreon content. But
now, you did mention that you wanted to do a quick comparison to music in other John Hughes movies.
So we'll pick the 3 Molly Ringwald. No, that's not what I want to do. Is it? Let me look at my notes real quick. So there's the 3 soundtracks that I was looking at. And I was trying to figure out which of the Brat Pack soundtracks is the best soundtrack. I think it's this one. But so the Breakfast Club soundtrack, it's got the Simple Minds song. It's got some instrumental tracks, like more score type things on there. I'd say it doesn't have another gigantic track on that one.
Oh yeah,
to match the Simple Minds.
As someone who owned both of these on cassette, the Breakfast Club soundtrack was the Simple Minds song, maybe the Wang Chung song, and that's fucking all you listen to.
Yeah, it's underwhelming. It's an underwhelming soundtrack for such an iconic 80s movie with a massive song attached to it.
Yeah.
The 16 Candles soundtrack is only 5 tracks, and it's 2 of them. One is the Stray Cats, and another was a Patti Smith song. Weird.
Interesting.
Weird. It's short too. It's strange. And I'd say that the Some Kind of Wonderful might be the second best, because it's got Jesus and Mary Chain and Flesh for Lulu and some other decent. It's similarly structured to the Pretty in Pink soundtrack, so it might be the second best overall. Yeah. But I have also not seen that movie.
One of the characters is kind of from the same scene.
And then I was like, what else is there? The Outsiders soundtrack is not really for this kind of music. Weird Science has Weird Science, but
which is a fun song.
It is, but what else is on that soundtrack? I don't even know.
Nor does anyone else.
Yeah, right. It's pretty much just that the title track. So yeah, so that was my thinking. I was just looking at the other Brat Pack compilations or soundtracks, and slightly underwhelming outside of this one. This one probably is the best.
Yeah, this is where Mr. Hughes peaked as far as his musical contribution, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree. Though I will say, Weird Science has a Killing Joke song on there. Wild.
Weird.
And Wall of Voodoo, The Lords of the New Church, that's Stiv Bators from the Dead Boys.
Oingo, yeah.
Oingo's Weird Science.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kim Wilde.
Yeah. I like Kim Wilde.
O&D.
Are they on there? No, they're not.
Well, these are in the film.
Oh, yeah. Well, Dave, I think we've talked to our heart's content about Pretty in Pink and its soundtrack.
Yes, thank you, gentlemen, for the show and for letting me come on. I really enjoyed it.
And thank you for doing the show. And we'll include in the show notes how to get a hold of all of your stuff. And I think that'll do it. So we'll sign off here.